So, Shabbat, פרק כ"ג, chapter 23, Mishnah 4. כפי שכבר הזכרנו במשנה הקודמת, like we already mentioned in the previous Mishnah, ממשיכה משנה זו בדין החשכה לתחום בשבת. This Mishnah is discussing if you're allowed to walk to the edge of town on Shabbat. על פי הכלל שאמר אבא שאול, according to the rule that אבא שאול said, כל שאני זכאי באמירתו, if I'm allowed to say it on Shabbat, if I'm allowed to talk about it on Shabbat, רשאי אני להחשיך עליו. That means I'm allowed to also walk to the edge of town because of that thing.
Just for clarification, edge of town means
2,000 past the last house. Right. They make a square, and there's a debate if you measure this side or this side, but yeah, 2,000 miles after the edge of town. כמו שבאנו, like we explained above. מחשיכים על התחום בשבת, you're allowed to walk to the edge of town on Shabbat. For example, for what things? לפקח על עסקי כלה, to take care of the matters of bringing a bride into a wedding, because it's a mitzvah. לטפל בצרכי הכלה לשם הכנסתה לחופה, to make sure that she gets married. ועל עסקי המת, and also you need to make sure that a levaya takes place,
corpse.
Burial takes place, you need to take care of those things. או לטפל בדברים הדרושים לקבורת המת, כגון, for example, להביא לו ארון ותכריכין. You know for the next day, you need for him a coffin or something to wrap him up with. Yeah? So you're allowed to go to the edge of town so that you will bring them back into town. ואף על פי שדברים אלו כשלעצמם אסור לעשותם בשבת, even though these things you're not allowed to do them on Shabbat, for example, to prepare a meal for the kala, right? You're not allowed to do it on Shabbat. Or to build a coffin, you're not allowed to do that on Shabbat. מכל מקום, הואיל והם עסקי מצווה, since there are things that have to do with the commandment, מותר לומר לאדם בשבת שיטפל בהם לאחר השבת. Since you're allowed to tell somebody, excuse me, we have a wedding after Shabbat, please prepare the wine. After Shabbat, bring in the wine. Since you're allowed to say it, you're allowed to walk.
So we don't bury people on Shabbat.
No, but let's say it's tomorrow morning and it's on the other side of town.
No, but you can tell a goy to make me a coffin.
No. You're not allowed to tell a goy to, but you can tell a Jew that right after Shabbat, start making a coffin.
Okay.
You cannot tell the goy to make you a coffin. No, that you're not allowed to do. But you can tell a Jew even, right after Shabbat, start making the coffin.
Can you tell the goy the same thing?
Yeah, if you can tell a Jew, you can tell a goy for sure. It's preferable to tell a non-Jew than a Jew. ולפיכך מותר גם להחשיך עליהם בשבת. So since you're allowed to say it on Shabbat, you're allowed to walk to the edge of town on Shabbat. כפי הכלל שאמר רבא שאול במשנה הקודמת. Just like the rule that Abba Shaul says in the previous Mishnah. Oh, now we're going to talk about a non-Jew. נוכרי שהביא חלילין בשבת. A non-Jew that brought musical instrument on Shabbat. בשביל ישראל, and he brought it because of a Jew. שכמנהג היו בימיהם, because it was a custom in their days, להשמיע צלילי קינה בחללים, to make sounds in flutes. בשעת הספד המת, when you mourn for the dead, just like the Irish do with the bagpipes. Same idea. להבדיל. לא יספוד בהם ישראל. So if a non-Jew brought it on Shabbat, though, this is on Shabbat he's bringing it, yeah? So he says, לא יספוד בהם ישראל, אסור לישראל להשתמש בהם במוצאי שבת. A Jew is not allowed to use them when Shabbat is over, להספד המת. If the morning is right after Shabbat, he's not allowed to use them. Because why? Because it was brought in on Shabbat.
Even by a goy.
Even by a goy, that's right. So what do you have to do? אלא אם כן באו ממקום קרוב. Only if they came from a very close place. In other words, if you carry them right out of the tchum, it takes 2 minutes to go from here to here, then you can use them 2 minutes after. Because that will be the time that it will have taken you to go out and bring them in. But if it took him like 6 hours, you cannot use it now for the next 6 hours. שהביאם הנוכרי ממקום שבתוך התחום. If he brought them in a place that inside the tchum, אבל אם ידוע שבאו ממקום רחוק, if they know that, so like this, in the first case you're allowed to use them immediately, right? Why are you allowed to use them immediately? Because he brought them immediately. He brought them within city limits, so it means he didn't carry them outside the city limits. אבל אם ידוע שבאו ממקום רחוק, but if he knows that he came from a far away place, יש להמתין במוצאי שבת, you have to wait after Shabbat, עד שתהיה שהות להביאה מאותו מקום. You have to wait for the time that it would have taken you to go out and bring them from that place. רש"י מפרש, רש"י explains, לא יספוד בהם ישראל לעולם. Rashi says no, since it was bought for the purpose of a Jew, bought on Shabbat, you're not allowed to use them forever. Veknasu, it's not that the God says you're not allowed to use it forever. God says you're allowed to use it immediately after the time it takes to bring them. But the rabbi says we're going to make penalized, don't use them forever. Why? Because if you start letting people are going to start telling non-Jews to do stuff for them on Shabbat. Exactly. And it's a penalty. משום שמוכח הדבר שבשי ישראל הובאו בשבת. Because it shows that the non-Jew did it specifically for the Jew. שאין דרך להביא חלילים אלא בשביל מת. Because why is he bringing the flutes? Obviously he's bringing the flutes for this funeral. Unless you can prove that he's bringing the flute for another funeral, for his funeral for example, and then you just borrow it after Shabbat, then that will be fine. Yeah? But if he's bringing it specifically for you, you're allowed to. אלא אם כן באו ממקום קרוב, but only if they came from a close place, כלומר, לדעת רב בגמרא, according to רב בגמרא, שידוע לנו בבירור שבאו ממקום קרוב, that we know for sure that he came from a close place, או לדעת שמואל, שיש לתלות שבאו ממקום קרוב. There's a מחלוקת in רב and גמורה, רב and שמואל. What's the מחלוקת? רב says that you know for sure where it came from. Shmuel says you don't know for sure where it came from. Let's say the guy brought a whiskey, right? And there's two stores right next to you, and the other far away from you. You don't know where he got the whiskey, in the one close to you and the one far away from you. But since there's one close to you, you can assume that he brought it from the one close to you. And Rav says no, unless you know for sure he brought it from this one, don't take it. So according to Shmuel, as long as there is a possibility for him to bring it from a closer place, you don't even have to ask him. You can just rely that he brought it from a closer place. Rav says no, you have to know for sure that he brought it from the closer place. That's the argument. Beram, but רוב המפרשים חולקים על רש"י. Most of the commentaries disagree with Rashi. ומבארים כפי שביארנו לעיל. And they said, like we said before, in other words, there's no penalty. We don't put a penalty on it, and you're allowed to use it as long as you wait for the time that it takes to bring the whiskey, either from the closer one, or that there is availability of a closer one. Rav and Shmuel מחלוקת. Okay, next. עשו לו ארון. What happens if look, you don't have control over the deeds of a non-Jew. So there was an earthquake, many Jews died. So the non-Jews decided, you know what, we're going to make some money. So they started working. They know there's going to be a funeral after Shabbat. So they started making coffins in the middle of town, making coffins, because the Jews are going to need it after Shabbat. Now the question is, are you allowed after Shabbat to use those coffins?
Because you did the question here, you didn't ask them.
They made it already.
Right.
Yeah, they made it. עשו לו ארון, עשו הנוכרים ארון, so the non-Jews are making an aron. Oh, it's a little bit different. They're not making it for a Jew, they're making it for the non-Jew. It's a factory, let's call it. בשביל נוכרי בשבת, they made it for a non-Jew on Shabbat. וחפרו לו כבן, or they dug a grave. Again, they didn't dig specifically for the Jew, they just dug a grave for
the next person.
For the next person, that's right. או שחפרו קבר לנוכרי בשבת. Then, in such a case, יקבר בו ישראל. Then you're allowed to bury a Jew in it, because it wasn't brought specifically, it wasn't made specifically for a Jew. It was made for whomever, one of those things. מותר לקבור בו ישראל. ואם באיש בישראל, but if they did it specifically, so my example was wrong. If they specifically saw that they're doing it for a Jew, you know for sure because there was an earthquake and only Jews died, and now they're walking. So you can assume they're doing it for a Jew for specifically. ואם בשביל ישראל, אבל אם עשו הנוכרים ארון בשביל ישראל או שחפרו לו קבר בשבת, so if they made for him a coffin or they dug a grave for him on Shabbat, לא ייקבר בו עולמית. A Jew should never be buried in that grave or that coffin forever. אותו ישראל. Which Jew? That specific Jew that they made it for. Not every other Jew. That specific Jew shouldn't be buried. אבל מותר לקבור בו ישראל אחר במוצאי שבת. But you're allowed to bury him another Jew after Shabbat. לאחר ששהו בכדי שיעשו. After you wait for the time that it takes you to dig the grave. ודווקא כשעשו הנוכרים את הארון או חפרו את הקבר בשבת. בשביל ישראל בפרסיה. This is when are we talking about when they did it outright, when everybody can see them doing it. אבל אסור לקברו בעולמית. You're not allowed to bury him forever. משום כבוד המת, because it doesn't, people are going to say all the time, you know, he was buried on a grave that was dug on Shabbat. It's not nice for him. אבל אם עשו בצינה, but if nobody knew, nobody is next to the cemetery, and the guys dug it on Shabbat, and nobody saw them digging it, you know, nobody saw them. מותר לקברו במוצאי שבת, then you're allowed to bury the person after Shabbat, not immediately, לאחר ששהו בכדי שיעשו. After you wait in order that they've done. An interesting rule that applies to today, that happens a lot, you invite a guest for Shabbos, right? So, this is having to do with the Jew, but it's similar to this. You're allowed to invite a guest for Shabbos. He comes on Shabbos, unfortunately, not before Shabbos. You invite him for before Shabbos, but he came on Shabbos. And so he came on Shabbos and he brought a bottle of whiskey. Are you allowed to use this bottle of whiskey on Shabbos? So the answer is no. You're not allowed to. What about after Shabbos? Are you allowed to use the bottle of whiskey after Shabbos?
However long it may have taken him to transport it to you.
Oh, so it says you have to wait for the time that it took him to there. But then there's going to be a problem. Tell you what a lot of people don't remember, which is going to, but the next week he's also invited for Shabbos and he comes over. And you have that bottle of whiskey on your table. We penalize him since he brought it on Shabbat. He's penalized. Every other Jew needs to wait the time. But because he did it on Shabbat himself, he's penalized that he may never drink from that barrel. So one has to be careful not to bring the wine that this person bought last week if he's Jewish. If he's not Jewish, there's other rules. But that's very relevant to exactly what we're discussing over here. It actually happens.
People still do that? Do they label it if someone brings after Shabbat? I mean, most times they wouldn't. But
Most time people forget, and that's what happens. That can tell you from personal experience. It's also
is
not.
it difference from wine or the same as whiskey?
There's no difference. In anything that he brought, he's penalized forever. A Jew that did the work on Shabbat is penalized for it forever. Another Jew is only penalized until the time it takes to do the thing. Okay.